Hello. Today General Hospital will reveal the week of March 24th through 28th at General Hospital promises to erupt with explosive events, emotional turmoil, and dangerous consequences. As spring quietly blossoms outside, a storm of reckoning brews within the walls of Port Charles, and at the center of it all is Kristina. Her long-simmering resentment toward Ava has reached a boiling point, pushing her into a reckless spiral where impulse overrides reason. What started as a personal grudge has now mutated into a vengeful mission, one Kristina convinces herself is about justice, though the path she walks is laced with tragedy. Kristina's anger is not without history. Years of emotional neglect, moments of invisibility within her own family, and the growing sense that Ava has manipulated her father, Sonny, during his moments of weakness, have all carved wounds too deep to heal. Each passive-aggressive glance from Ava, each dismissive word, has chipped away at Kristina's patience. And now, after overhearing a conversation she was never meant to hear, one where Ava coldly questions Sonny's need for his heart medication, Kristina snaps. She begins to track Ava's movements. Every mundane habit becomes a piece of a larger plan. She learns the garage Ava frequents, the time she usually leaves Sonny's house, and the make and model of her car. Kristina doesn't talk to anyone. She doesn't write anything down. It all lives in her head, swirling like a storm until one night, it finds release. Under the eerie silence of a dimly lit garage, Kristina stands alone. The clinks and echoes of tools hanging on the walls seem to judge her every breath. She stares at the car she believes belongs to Ava, dark, sleek, menacing even in stillness. Her hands tremble as she lifts the hood and begins to tamper with the brake lines. Her mind screams doubt, but her heart pounds with purpose. This is what she deserves, she whispers to herself. But what she doesn't know, what she never could have predicted, is that Ava will never drive that car again. The next day, a simple twist of fate changes everything. Ava forgets her car keys at Sonny's. Rick, stopping by to drop off some legal documents and noticing the keys, picks them up. Later, after a tense conversation with Elizabeth, who's struggling with emotional wounds of her own, Rick offers to drive her home. He has no idea the car has been sabotaged. Neither does Liz, as she settles into the passenger seat, exhausted and emotionally raw. As the sun sets and the streets of Port Charles empty, tragedy strikes. Two cars collide at a crossroads, the sound of twisting metal, shattering glass, and the unmistakable shriek of brakes that never worked. Kristina, driving nearby, hears the impact and turns the corner just in time to see the aftermath. Two vehicles mangled, smoke rising, and Lucky's voice piercing the chaos as he shouts, "What did you do, Kristina?" Elizabeth lies unconscious, blood trickling down her temple. Rick is barely breathing, his chest heaving irregularly. Kristina steps out of her car in horror, paralyzed by what she's seeing. She stumbles backward as if trying to escape her own actions, but the damage has been done. Her plan to stop Ava has turned into a nightmare that no one, not even Kristina, can undo. Elsewhere, Sonny struggles through yet another hard episode. Collapsing in his living room, he reaches desperately for his medication. Ava stands above him, holding the bottle, her expression unreadable. "Do you really need these?" she asks coldly. It's unclear whether she's taunting him or testing him, but one thing is certain. If Sonny survives this episode, he may finally see Ava for who she truly is. And if Kristina hears about this moment, it could validate every dark thought she's been harboring, reinforcing the belief that her actions were justified. The days that follow are filled with tension and grief. Kristina is brought in for questioning. Molly, once her biggest supporter, now looks at her sister with wounded disbelief. Lucky avoids her gaze altogether, too consumed by guilt and anger to speak. Kristina's once unshakable bravado crumbles as the weight of what she's done sinks in. She hadn't meant to hurt Rick. She never wanted Liz in danger. But now she must live with the knowledge that her hands, guided by emotion, not logic, set this all in motion. In the sterile halls of General Hospital, whispers of the accident echo. Staffers murmur about Ava's car, about brake lines and sabotage. Kristina walks them in a daze, caught between denial and despair. Every corner she turns, she sees the faces of those she hurt. And though her injuries from the crash are minor, the emotional scars are just beginning to form. She wanted to stop Ava. She wanted justice. But all Kristina has now is guilt, broken trust, and a future clouded by consequences. What happens next is uncertain, but one thing is clear, nothing in Port Charles will ever be the same. And Kristina, whether she admits it or not, may never be able to go back to who she was before that fateful night. But fate has never been one to obey human plans, especially not those forged in desperation and guided by rage. As night fell over Port Charles, the streets grew quiet, bathed in a haunting silence that seemed to warn of something terrible looming on the horizon. It was on one of these deserted roads, beneath flickering streetlights and the distant hum of life elsewhere, that the unthinkable happened. Two vehicles, heading in opposite directions, collided with a deafening crash. The sound of twisted metal screaming through the air shattered the stillness, echoing like a thunderclap across the empty night. In an instant, glass exploded into a rain of jagged shards, wheels spun out of control, and smoke billowed from beneath crumpled hoods. It all unfolded in a matter of seconds, but the aftermath would stretch far beyond that moment. Kristina had been driving not far behind, her thoughts a chaotic mess of self-justification and guilt. She hadn't yet heard about Sunny's heart episode. She didn't know Ava had never gotten behind the wheel of the car she sabotaged. But as she rounded the corner and saw the crash site in front of her, mangled metal, twisted frames, sparks flying from broken engines, her blood ran cold. The headlights of one car flickered erratically, illuminating the devastated scene in pulses of light and darkness, like a strobe capturing a nightmare in slow motion. And then came the voice. A scream cut through the chaos, ragged and full of disbelief. "What did you do, Kristina?" "It was lucky." His voice cracked with horror as he stumbled onto the scene, rushing toward the wreckage. His eyes darted frantically between the vehicles until they landed on Kristina, frozen near the edge of the road, her face drained of color, her body trembling. She couldn't answer him. She couldn't even move. Her eyes were locked on the windshield of the car she had tampered with, the one that wasn't supposed to be there. Behind the fractured glass, Rick was slumped over the steering wheel, unmoving. A trail of blood traced down the side of his face, glistening in the erratic glow of headlights. Beside him, Elizabeth lay motionless, her eyes closed, her head resting at an unnatural angle against the window. Blood was smeared on the inside of the glass, and for one terrifying moment, Kristina feared she might be staring at two lifeless bodies, victims not of random fate, but of her own calculated choice. Time seemed to stop. The world blurred at the edges. The cold March air pressed against Kristina's lungs, but she couldn't breathe. Her knees buckled slightly, and she gripped the side mirror of her own car to steady herself. Everything she thought she had been fighting for, justice, fairness, revenge, collapsed under the weight of what she had done. She had wanted to stop Ava. She had wanted to protect Sunny, to punish someone she saw as manipulative and dangerous. But now, all she had done was destroy two innocent lives. All she had managed was to transfer the danger she intended for Ava onto people she had no reason to harm. People who had trusted her. People who didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of her vendetta. Lucky continued shouting, trying to pry open the twisted car doors. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder with every heartbeat. But Kristina barely heard them. Her focus narrowed to a singular, haunting realization: this was her fault. All of it. Though she herself had escaped the accident with only a few minor injuries, a scratch across her temple, bruises blooming across her arms, nothing could touch the devastation inside her. The weight of her actions settled over her shoulders like a shroud. Her hands, which had once trembled with defiance as she disabled the brakes, now shook with fear and regret. In that moment, Kristina wasn't the avenger she imagined herself to be. She was just a girl who had made a terrible, irreversible mistake. A girl who would carry the image of Elizabeth's bloodied face and Rick's slumped form in her mind for the rest of her life. A girl whose idea of justice had been warped into something monstrous. And now, as flashing red and blue lights lit up the night sky and paramedics swarmed the scene, Kristina stood on the edge of a chasm she had dug with her own hands, one that could swallow not only her future, but everything she had ever tried to protect. Meanwhile, across town, in the dim, shadowed quiet of Sunny's living room, a different kind of chaos was unfolding, quieter, but no less lethal. Sunny, alone and vulnerable, clutched at his chest as a familiar tightness seized his heart. Sweat poured down his forehead, soaking the collar of his shirt as he staggered toward the table where he usually kept his emergency medication. His breathing grew shallow, his steps unsteady. Panic flared in his eyes as he realized the vial of pills was missing. Just a few feet away, standing in the soft glow of a lamp, was Ava. She held the bottle of Sunny's heart medication delicately between her fingers, as though it were nothing more than an object of idle curiosity. Her gaze was sharp, cold, and unreadable, a striking contrast to the man in front of her, who now dropped to his knees, gasping. For a long moment, she simply watched him. The air between them pulsed with a sinister energy. "Do you need these?" Ava finally asked, her voice smooth but laced with malice. She tilted the bottle ever so slightly, just enough for the pills inside to rattle ominously. The question wasn't one of concern. It was a challenge, a power play at its most cruel. Sunny, unable to speak, reached out a trembling hand. His body convulsed with pain, but his mind was still sharp enough to understand the gravity of what Ava was doing. In that instant, it became clear, she had control, and she was choosing not to help him. Whether it was revenge, resentment, or something darker driving her, didn't matter. What mattered was the look in her eyes, one that would forever mark the beginning of a new kind of war. If Sunny survived this moment, the consequences would be far-reaching. Not only would his relationship with Ava be irreparably severed, but the fragile balance within the Corinthos family would be shattered. Kristina, already on the brink of emotional collapse, wouldn't hesitate to take sides, and Ava would find herself not just on the outside, but standing directly in the path of Kristina's rage. Back at the crash site, the dust was beginning to settle, but the wreckage left behind spoke louder than any scream. Shards of broken glass glinted in the glow of emergency lights, littering the pavement like fragments of a broken future. The twisted metal frames of the two vehicles stood as cold monuments to a decision gone horribly wrong. Sirens howled in the background, but it was the questions rising in the minds of those present that echoed loudest. Would Elizabeth survive the trauma she had just endured? Her vitals were weak, her body barely responsive as paramedics worked to stabilize her. And Rick, whose face was ghostly pale, his breath shallow, wasn't responding to the sound of his name. Every second that passed seemed to pull him further away. The silence from both of them cast a long shadow over the scene, a heavy reminder that Kristina's actions might have cost two people their lives. And what of Kristina herself? Was she strong enough to face what she had done, to truly absorb the consequences of her vengeance? She stood alone now, wrapped in a blanket offered by a medic, but still shaking, not from the cold, but from something deeper. The realization of her own recklessness had struck her like a bolt of lightning, and she couldn't escape the image of Elizabeth's blood or the lifeless stillness of Rick's body behind that shattered windshield. For Lucky, watching Kristina crumble under the weight of her guilt stirred a complex storm of emotions. He had always seen her as a little sister, brash, yes, but full of heart. Now, he didn't know what to feel. Could he forgive her for such a devastating lapse in judgment? Could he separate the girl he once knew from the one who had tampered with someone's car brakes, who had almost killed two innocent people? And then there was Molly. Her face, when she finally saw Kristina at the hospital, was pale and drained of all warmth. There was no anger, no tears, just a painful void. She had spent so long trying to pull Kristina back from the edge, reminding her of who she truly was, hoping to salvage the bond between sisters. But after this, could that bond survive? Or had Kristina crossed a line that no amount of love could bring her back from? As night gave way to morning, and the hospital buzzed with the rhythm of emergency care, the world around Kristina continued to collapse in slow, deliberate motion. She had set a trap for Ava and caught the wrong prey. Now, the fallout had begun, and no one, not even Kristina, would be spared from its consequences. With every ounce of tension, guilt, and sorrow crashing down upon her, Kristina now stands at the most pivotal crossroads of her life. What began as a fleeting moment of vengeful impulse, something she believed would deliver justice, or at the very least some semblance of control over the chaos she felt, has morphed into a seismic event that shattered everything and everyone around her. It was supposed to be a warning, a message, a calculated attempt to make Ava pay for her sins. But what it became was far more than Kristina ever anticipated, a devastating blow that fractured the very core of her relationships, leaving only silence, suspicion, and pain in its wake. Now, Kristina finds herself adrift in the wreckage of her own making. Her actions, once driven by emotion and righteous fury, now hang over her like a storm cloud, casting long shadows over every memory, every bond she once held dear. The sisterhood she once shared with Molly, fragile, but real, is now frayed beyond recognition. The trust she had in Lucky's support, his belief in her goodness, has been buried under the weight of the accident. Her connection to Sunny, already strained by years of misunderstanding and distance, may never recover. And as for Ava, though she may have been the target, she has now become a symbol of Kristina's failure to see the bigger picture, to truly understand the consequences of tampering with fate. The halls of General Hospital have become a living reflection of her turmoil. Every glance cast in her direction, every hushed conversation behind closed doors, is a reminder of the lives she nearly destroyed. She walks through them not as a victim, not even as a heroine of her own tragedy, but as a cautionary tale. The girl who let anger write her story. The woman who learned, far too late, that revenge is never clean. And yet, the future remains uncertain. No one in Port Charles can say for sure what will come next, for Kristina, or for the others whose lives have been caught in the aftershock. Will Elizabeth recover? Will Rick regain consciousness and offer forgiveness, or press charges? Will Sonny confront his daughter, or retreat further into himself as he wages his own war against Ava's manipulation? The answers lie somewhere beyond the horizon, veiled in silence and dread. But one truth has already been etched into Kristina's soul: the cost of her impulsiveness will follow her for the rest of her life. Every decision she makes from this point forward will be made in the long, cold shadow of that night, the night she chose to act rather than think, to destroy rather than heal. No apology, no amount of penance, will ever fully undo what she set in motion. She stands now not as the fiery, impulsive daughter of a powerful man, but as a fractured figure, deeply human, deeply flawed, and burdened with the knowledge that her greatest mistake may also be the moment that defines her. Whether she rises from it or falls further remains to be seen. But no matter which path she chooses, the ghost of that crash, the blood on the glass, and the weight of what could have been will never stop following her.